Okay, so when you think of Leonardo da Vinci, your mind probably jumps straight to artist, right? The Mona Lisa, the Last Supper. But let's talk about the other Leonardo, the guy whose mind was this beautiful, chaotic storm of ideas. He looked at the world and didn't see a finished masterpiece. He saw a deeply flawed prototype that he just had to fix. And this quote, it just absolutely nails it. For Leonardo, reality wasn't a strict set of rules you had to obey. Nope, for him, it was just the starting point for an argument. See, he didn't just want to paint the world. He wanted to take it apart, piece by piece, find all its weaknesses, and then sketch a better, way more interesting version, even if that version was completely, gloriously impossible. So to really get a handle on his wild inventions, you first have to understand the mind they came from. It was a mind that seemed to be running on what you can only call weaponized curiosity. Here's the thing about Leonardo. The guy had basically zero formal schooling. He learned by just poking things, by observing, questioning, and dismantling everything around him. He even taught himself anatomy by dissecting corpses in the dead of night. His notebooks are just a testament to this incredible chaos. Thousands of pages of flying machines, war engines, and yeah, even grocery lists, all written backwards in his famous mirror script. For him, finishing a painting, that was optional. The real goal was to understand everything. And this obsessive need to know led him to one of his greatest obsessions, flight. Leonardo would watch birds just soaring around totally effortlessly, and you get the feeling he thought, I can do that. It wasn't just some scientific curiosity, it felt like nature itself was personally challenging him. And so his answer was the ornithopter, a magnificent bat-winged machine where a pilot would strap themselves into this wooden frame and physically flap the wings using a system of levers and pulleys. It was an incredible concept, powered almost entirely by hope and some serious anatomical ambition. And this is where you see the classic Leonardo paradox. The genius part? He understood the principles of aerodynamics centuries before they were formally figured out. The reality? The machine required a pilot with the physical strength of a superhero. His math wasn't the problem. The fundamental flaw was in the squishy limitations of the human body itself. But did this failure stop him? Of course not. It just made him pivot. If conquering the sky by going up was off the table, well, what about controlling the fall on the way down? So he comes up with his design for the parachute. Now, you gotta remember, this is an age where most people were probably scared of ladders. And here's Leonardo just calmly sketching a device for people to, jump off towers. He even wrote in his notes that someone could fall from any great height without injury. A pretty bold claim, considering the alternative. But get this, he was right. It worked. In the year 2000, a skydiver named Adrian Nicholas actually built one using only materials available in the Renaissance, jumped from a hot air balloon, and landed completely safely. Leonardo's beautiful madness, as it turns out, was also perfectly sound engineering. But Leonardo was not done with flight. Not even close. Next, he designed the aerial screw, which is, for all intents and purposes, the world's first blueprint for a helicopter. It was this giant spiraling cone made of linen that, in theory, would literally screw itself into the air and lift off the ground when spun really, really fast. I mean, the guy correctly identified the fundamental principle of vertical flight. You push air down, it creates lift. That is exactly how modern helicopters work. The reality, of course, was that his design was supposed to be powered by 4 dudes turning cranks. Renaissance Italy was missing a pretty key component, an engine. There just wasn't enough horsepower available to get the thing off the ground. And this same unstoppable inventive drive, it absolutely applied to his military designs. You see, when powerful patrons would ask Leonardo for a piece of art, he'd often get distracted and come back with blueprints for terrifying war machines instead. The man just couldn't help himself. He designed this, an armored tank, centuries before anyone else even thought of it. He came up with a giant crossbow, the size of a small house, designed for pure shock and awe. And then there's the 33-barreled organ, basically a conceptual machine gun designed to unleash an absolute storm of fire on the battlefield. The man's creativity was just overwhelming. Let's just focus on that tank for a second. It was this circular kind of turtle-like vehicle, covered in sloped armor to deflect cannon walls, with cannons pointing out in every direction, 360 degrees. On a battlefield, it would have been an absolute unstoppable nightmare. But it was riddled with problems. First, it was powered by a crew of men turning cranks, not exactly a sustainable energy source. Second, the manufacturing needed to build it was centuries ahead of its time. And then there's the weirdest part. The gear system in his drawings was designed completely backwards. If you built it exactly as he drew it, the thing wouldn't move an inch. Which leads to this fascinating question. Was that a simple mistake from a genius? Or did Leonardo, who wrote about how much he hated war, deliberately include a fatal flaw to make sure no warlord could ever actually build his terrifying creation? It's a mystery we'll probably never solve. So after all these brilliant but ultimately flawed machines, we have to ask ourselves, what was Leonardo's real legacy? It wasn't any single device. No, it was the massive, chaotic, absolutely brilliant collection of notebooks he left behind for us. He left behind over 13,000 pages of sketches, notes, and ideas. It's like a direct window into a mind that was constantly working, constantly questioning, and constantly trying to redesign the world from the ground up. This brings us to the big one. If it wasn't the tank or the flying machine, what was Leonardo's single greatest invention of all? It was his methodology. His greatest creation was the idea that the universe is basically a puzzle, a complex machine, and that its rules can be understood. And then anyone with enough curiosity has the right to take it apart and try to build a better version. He wasn't just an artist or an inventor. He was a pioneer of the scientific method itself. And really, that's the whole story. Leonardo's sketches might not have flown and his tanks might not have rolled, but they proved something way more important, that the limits of what we think is possible are often just the limits of our own imagination. He didn't just invent machines, he invented possibility itself.